Betty singers just want to invite you to look at number 191 as we sing it for you. The poetry is really beautiful, but we acknowledge that with masks on, it might be easier to read the words. We will do our best. Thank you and welcome.
Dearly beloved, family and friends, we are gathered here today to remember the life of Jeanette MacDonald Anderson. Though Jeanette was just shy of 90 years old at the time of her death, we had all hoped, even expected, to have more time with her. I am Reverend Katie Scudera, and I am the lead minister here at First Parish in Needham Unitarian Universalist. I was Jeanette's minister for the past 8 years. Jeanette was deeply devoted to this congregation, and we were quite devoted to her too. Jeanette leaves quite a legacy at First Parish and unfillable big shoes now that she's gone. I deeply appreciate all of you who have traveled or dialed in from near and far to support Jeanette's family, especially her sisters and her children. Please remember that the extended MacDonald Anderson family welcomes those of you here in the building to a reception in our parish hall, just down the hallway this way, following this service, and that the congregation's COVID task force requests that while you're in the sanctuary, you wear your masks over your nose and mouth for the duration of the time of the service, unless you're speaking from a microphone. We hope that this service will capture Jeanette's spirit and her life as a loving daughter, sister, wife, mother, grandmother, and friend, a dedicated educator and lifelong learner, a lover of the arts, travel, and music, and a faithful Unitarian Universalist. Thank you all again for being here, and again, welcome, one and all. I invite forward Jeanette's living children, Erica, Luke, and Victoria, to light our chalice, symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith, and to offer a reading selected by Jeanette herself from the play The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds.
All right. For one thing, the effect of gamma rays on man in the moon marigolds has made me curious about the sun and the stars. For the universe itself must be like a world of great atoms, and I want to know more about it. But most important, I suppose, my experiment has made me feel important. Every atom in me, in everybody, has come from the sun, from places beyond our dreams. The atoms of our hands, the atoms of our hearts. Atom, atom, what a beautiful word.
Thank you. Now let us rise in body or in spirit and join in singing Let It Be a Dance with updated lyrics in the third verse. You'll find the words in your orders of service.
Let it be a dance
I'm the one who puts the lyrics in the orders of service, so sorry about that, Justin. As we begin this memorial celebration of Jeanette, please join me in the spirit of prayer and reflection so that we may center ourselves on this precious present moment. Spirit of life and love, known by many names and through many ways, thank you for your presence among us today, both in this church where generations of Needhamites have come to honor and celebrate their deceased loved ones, and in the homes of those who love Jeanette and are participating online. We know that with your support and the support of all those present here today, we will navigate our grief at Jeanette's unexpected death. We are also grateful for the presence of this gathered community of those who knew and loved Jeanette, and we affirm that our communal love and all the lessons and gifts Jeanette gave us are a blessing to all present here and to all those whose lives we touch. We pray that while the dust of Jeanette's body was returned to the earth this morning at Needham Cemetery, physically reunited with her husband Jack and her son Mark, we pray that Jeanette's spirit live on through us in our words and deeds, inspired by her love of family, friends, and congregational community, her endless curiosity and love of history and the arts, and her open and supportive heart to all those who crossed her path. May we not forget her and how she influenced our lives and our world. We take a moment now in quiet reflection with the ringing of the singing bowl to offer the silent prayers of our own hearts and to bring to our minds our favorite memories of Jeanette. Amen. I now invite forward Jeanette's nephews, Glenn Gonnett and David Critchley, and her friends, Phyllis Beck and Pat Thal, to offer our readings. A poem from New England Unitarian poet Emily Dickinson, quotes from German-American physicist Albert Einstein, and two poems from New England poet and unofficial UU saint Mary Oliver.
Hope is the Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers. that perches in the soul and sings a tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm, that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me.
This first quotation was from Albert Einstein in September of 1932. Our actions should be based on the ever-present awareness that human beings, in their thinking, feeling, and acting, are not free, but just as causally bound as the stars in motion. The second reading is from October of 1929. Everything is determined by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insect as well as for the star. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune intoned in the distance by an invisible piper.
Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Starlings in Winter by Mary Oliver. Chunky and noisy, but with stars in their black feathers, they spring from the telephone wire, and instantly they are acrobats in the freezing wind. And now, in the theater of air, they swing over buildings, dipping and rising. They float like one stippled star that opens, becomes for a moment fragmented, then closes again, and you watch, and you try, but you simply can't imagine how they do it. With no articulated instruction, no pause, only the silent confirmation that they are this notable thing, this wheel of many parts that can rise and spin over and over again, full of gorgeous life. Ah, world, what lessons you prepare for us, even in the leafless winter, even in the ashy city. I am thinking now of grief and getting past it. I feel my boots trying to leave the ground. I feel my heart pumping hard. I want to think again of dangerous and noble things. I want to be light and frolicsome. I want to be improbable, beautiful, and afraid of nothing, as though I had wings.
An ode to Jeanette from her archival Foot Soldiers in the Church at its tercentennial. Boxes here, boxes there, boxes everywhere. Papers here, papers there, papers everywhere. Think we'll make it? We don't know. Jeanette is leading and we just go and go. 2011 is coming up soon, so we work hard all morning and stop about noon. There's figures and facts and newspaper clippings. There's figures and facts, some memories are slipping. There's things made of wood, there's banners and biographies, and what is it we should remember? It's all a great mystery that's coming together under the leadership of one who's so clever. She has all us working until we are done, and to our surprise we find it was fun. Hail Jeanette, our leader, clever and bold. We'll get through this together so the story can be told. What an honor to offer Jeanette's eulogy. With many archival papers Jeanette herself saved and memories from her beloved family members. We'll get through this together so the story can be told. Jeanette MacDonald was born November 16, 1932 in Longview, Texas, joining her mother, Virginia Freeman MacDonald, father, Hugh Thomas MacDonald, and her eldest sister by 3 years, Catherine, who was and is called Punky. Jeanette was called Jetty, though I have not heard a soul in Needham ever call her that. Hugh and Virginia grew up in neighboring small towns and were both from white pioneer farmers and homesteaders who had colonized Texas in the 1850s. The pair met through church and social networks in their region. Virginia, a college graduate working as a home demonstration agent, and Hugh, a self-taught roughneck intellectual who worked in oil. Hugh narrowly avoided conscription into World War I before it ended. His whole career was with the oil company Halliburton, yes, that Halliburton, which had just been founded in 1919 and had under 100 employees at the time. Hugh was a cementer, responsible for the crews who managed Halliburton's unique cementing mixture as pioneers of cementing oil wells instead of gushing them. That's all I can tell you about it. Oil was still needed during the Great Depression, so the MacDonald family, nuclear family, lived fairly free of the stresses of the economic collapse. Hugh would even act as a supplier of small, hard-to-find goods like tires and nuts and bolts to the extended family through the end of World War II. But lacking permanent company housing, Jeanette and her family lived in motels in Longview and then subsequent oil boom towns during her childhood. She and Punky shared a double bed, and later their two younger sisters would share a bed too. Elizabeth, called Betsy, born in 1935, and Virginia, called Ginger, in 1938. All four girls were named after maternal relatives, Jeanette after her great aunt. Hugh and Virginia were close with their extended families, and the family took many road trips around Texas and Oklahoma. On car trips, their mother would lead them in I Spy and teach them rhymes and songs to pass the time. Rhymes and songs the sisters would eventually teach their own children. Reading was also a major part of MacDonald family life, and Jeanette's favorites were Nancy Drew and Jane Austen. Working as a lead cementer was hard on Hugh's health, and eventually his hearing had deteriorated so much that he could no longer be trusted to work out on the rigs. Halliburton transitioned him to a more administrative role, working as a safety manager out of the company's headquarters in Duncan, Oklahoma. The MacDonalds moved to Duncan when Jeanette was in 6th grade. Fairly close together in age, Jeanette overlapped with both Punky and Betsy in junior and senior high. Jeanette was quite close with Punky, and the sisters described them as two peas in a pod. They shared many friends and interests and were both stellar students. Betsy recalled to me that it was very challenging directly following the brilliant and beautiful Jetty MacDonald in school. Jeanette was a very busy teenager. She played tennis, was a state debate champion, worked as a lifeguard in the summers, and participated in their local Methodist church every Sunday and often during the week, too, developing a lifelong love of congregational community and classic Methodist hymnody. Her whole life, she kept a charm bracelet from high school that displayed her many debate awards and a citizenship award for which she was also recognized in the local newspaper. I believe that Victoria's wearing it today. There it is. Jeanette's father would joke that he knew about what his girls were doing because they were always in the papers, having done something that made him proud. Virginia and the girls were big personalities with a lot to say, and Hugh's hearing loss didn't make him any more chatty than he already wasn't. They were a very noisy family with the 4 girls and all their friends coming in and out, and their father would frequently turn off his hearing aids so he could read the paper. This habit of Hugh's only made his daughters speak even louder so they could definitely catch his attention when needed. Jeanette left Duncan as a permanent residence when she left for college at the University of Oklahoma in Norman. But there was much in Duncan she carried with her for her whole life. Jeanette held a strong love and can-do spirit for family, exemplified by her mother's delicious homemade baking, incredible homemade Christmas decorating, and impeccably homemade clothes. Jeanette carried distaste for anti-union efforts, beginning with her father's company of Halliburton, and Jeanette was committed to community and to service. In answer to a survey conducted by fellow First Parishioners, Jeanette remembered that her first awareness of civic responsibility was during World War II, when everyone in my little town cooperated on food rationing, victory gardens, scrap iron drives, and recycling, everything that could help with the war effort. This effort touched all ages and all aspects of church, school, and family life. And she added, "It is regrettable that it takes a war to mount a huge civic effort." Jeanette stayed just as busy as she was as a high schooler through college and for the rest of her life. She studied political science and economics at OU, taking classes over the summer and winter breaks as well, and she worked at the university bookstore. She fell in with a group of what she called young idealists that encouraged her to pursue a career in line with her social values, brought her to the national convention of the NAACP when it was held in nearby Oklahoma City, and introduced her to Unitarianism at the First Unitarian Church of Oklahoma City. While an undergraduate, Jeanette honed her open-minded and open-hearted attitude and her strong sense of equity and justice. Unitarianism, and after the merger in 1961, Unitarian Universalism, would be an important part of the rest of Jeanette's life. After joining First Unitarian, she would stay in Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist congregations. Unitarian Universalism gave Jeanette community and spiritual nourishment, where the lifelong quest for meaning and purpose makes life meaningful and purposeful, where the equal dignity of all people and our interconnections is acknowledged. After she graduated from OU, Jeanette was involved in a number of labor movement and post-World War II rebuilding efforts, spending time in Detroit with Students for Democratic Action and in Chicago, Sweden, and France with the American Friends Service Committee. Jeanette then settled in New York City, where she began graduate studies in labor relations at Columbia and lived in an integrated international student home in Greenwich Village. Jeanette continued in public service through the Committee on Civil Rights and the Church World Services Refugee Resettlement Program, and she attended the Unitarian Community Church. She loved living in Manhattan, the arts, the intellectualism, the diversity. And Manhattan is where she met her beloved husband, Orville Jack Anderson. Jack had grown up extremely poor in Seattle with a difficult family life. He narrowly avoided being drafted into World War II by being accepted on scholarship to Princeton University in New Jersey, and on the East Coast he stayed. Their daughters recall the story that Jeanette was working as Jack's secretary at a labor organization, as they were both lifelong social change makers, and that Jack too was getting his master's at Columbia. Jeanette and Jack married at the Community Church of New York in 1955. Jeanette wearing a wedding dress handmade by her mother. They would be married for 52 years. The Andersons would welcome their 4 children into the world while still living in Manhattan. Mark in 1956, Erica in 1958, Luke in 1965, and Victoria in 1968. Jeanette's mother traveled to New York for each birth, though unfortunately Jeanette's father died during this time period from lung cancer. For a brief time between Erica and Luke, the family moved to Syracuse for Jack's work, but the city was their primary residence in those 2 decades. Jack worked as a community organizer at the Lower East Side Neighborhood Association, and Jeanette taught reading at Junior High School 12. After leaving the labor relations program at Columbia and a short stint studying history instruction at Hunter College, Jeanette wrote that she was aghast that some of my junior high students could not read. From then on, I was committed to urban education and in particular, reading disabilities. She would also teach a Title I program for remedial reading and at Bishop McConnell High School. Jeanette and Jack's children describe living in New York City as a family of 6 as not glamorous, but they remember Jeanette as quite creative to make a tight budget stretch for her children to receive the very best in cultural and educational experiences. And despite the geographic distance, the new Anderson family and the McDonalds stayed close, with Virginia visiting regularly and then long bus and car rides between Oklahoma and New York. It was a challenge to get all 4 McDonald daughters and all of their children together all at once, but family reunions with the extended Freeman and McDonald families helped. In 1971, Jeanette made her last big move to Needham, Massachusetts, when Jack was transferred to the government social service offices in Boston, first in Health and Human Services and then in refugee resettlement during the Hmong migration caused by the Vietnam War. In Needham, the Andersons lived on Hoyden Street for a long while and developed wonderful friendships with their neighbors. As you may have read in her obituary, Jeanette is warmly remembered by her Hoyden Street neighbors for setting the rules for how old children needed to be to cross the road alone, 5 years old, and at what age children should stop having large neighborhood birthday parties, 10 years old. Money continued to be tight for Jeanette and Jack, so they always rented in Needham. But as they had done in New York, they saved and invested in their children's collegiate education and found ways to pay for dance lessons and art classes and Celtics tickets. The family formally joined First Parish in 1971, with all 4 children memorably attending youth group and About Your Sexuality. The Unitarians know what I'm talking about. And Jeanette became a pillar of the congregation, serving on the worship committee, including leading summer services with Methodist hymns and stories from her childhood faith, partnered with another recently deceased first parishioner of blessed memory, our lay guitarist and vocalist Jim Sargent. Jeanette served on the archives committee, including as chair during and after the congregation's 300th anniversary. She was a wonderful partner to First Parish ministers and the Needham History Center in maintaining historic materials and searching them to learn more about our congregations and our town's past. Jeanette was also an active participant in our long-running Sunday night book group. She was present at nearly every congregational event and often supported social justice work in the church, whether it be buying fair trade products from the Green Congregation Committee or traveling with fellow first parishioners to an abortion rights march on Washington. In an interview for our First Parish newsletter a few years ago, Jeanette told another recently deceased first parishioner of blessed memory, Kay Taylor, that First Parish was the most important part of her life after her family. Not that Jeanette wasn't still very busy following her passions for offering reading education to historically underserved communities. Most of Jeanette's career in Massachusetts was at 2 local schools, Dorchester or Dot High School to the east in Boston, and then Mass Bay Community College to the west in Wellesley. She served as an educator at these institutions for just under 20 years each, working part-time at Mass Bay into her early 80s. She also taught at Malden's Hospital School of Nursing, at the MCI Norfolk Prison, at Bridgewater State, and at Dean College for shorter periods. Jeanette loved teaching and was an excellent educator. Part of her teaching skill was experience and aptitude, and part of it was that she went back to graduate school in the 1970s, yes, with all those children at home and while teaching full-time. And she earned her Master of Education and then her Doctor in Education in Reading through Boston University. Her youngest, Victoria, was 20 years old when Jeanette graduated with her doctorate in 1988. Her thesis entitled Tracking the Language Process of Basic and Competent Writers in Content Area Writing. Jeanette and Jack set a very high example for their children and their communities in both service and in lifelong learning. Jeanette's children described her to me as always helping others, looking for the best in every person, and incredibly non-judgmental, with a genuine curiosity about every person in her family and her community. She guided and encouraged her children gently and lovingly toward their dreams. Yet, as a mother, Jeanette was both very loving and progressive, and had some traditional guardrails for her children. In her home, there would be no swearing, no holes in anyone's clothes, no messy rooms, and no staying out past curfew. And while her children could follow their passions academically and professionally, absolutely no argument about their participation in family or church events. Jeanette herself practiced what she preached, always beautifully dressed, often with a colorful scarf, always on time, organized in her work and in her volunteer service, never forgetting a thank you note when it was warranted, and at First Parish for worship nearly every Sunday. An earthquake in the Anderson family's life came after their eldest, Mark's, first semester at Columbia. He began to show symptoms of a severe mental health issue with hallucinations, emotional outbursts, and confusion. Mark was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the mid-1970s when there was little understanding or reliable treatment for that disorder. Sometimes Mark had to be truly rescued from insane asylums, and it was en vogue at the time to blame many mental health issues on inadequate love and care from the patient's mother. An absolutely inaccurate theory, both in general and especially with Jeanette. When Mark was well, he was still the sweet and intelligent young man the family knew, but he was not always well. He lived off and on with his parents and his younger siblings in Needham for 2 decades and was very well loved. Jeanette and Jack did their best to carve out time for their younger children as they supported and cared for Mark, but it was very hard. Blessedly, by the 2000s, Mark was in more effective psychiatric care and medication and could live on his own or in group homes. And Mark wasn't the only one in their home with chronic health struggles. Jack struggled with diabetes for decades and survived both colon and prostate cancer. Despite Mark's and Jack's health issues, Jeanette and Jack still managed to frequent museums and art events and to travel locally throughout New England and across the pond to Western and Eastern Europe. Jeanette would study and take them to places of unique historical interest, and Jack would learn the basics of the local language prior to their trips. After Jeanette's mother died in 1990, she would also travel annually for a sister's reunion, at least every other year, choosing a new location each time for her, Punky, Betsy, and Ginger to enjoy together. I don't have any water. Okay. Oh, good. Our children are both very young, so we're just switching childhood diseases right now. Jeanette was not one to complain about any of these familial problems, and she focused on the best moments of family life. It was also a great joy for Jeanette and Jack that their younger children graduated college, settled into careers they loved, got married, and that Luke and Victoria had children of their own. Jeanette loved being a granny. Jacqueline first arriving in 1994, and then Ryan, Cameron, Noah, Evan, Owen, and finally Aslan in 2010. And she wanted to know everything about them, giving them and their parents a journalistic style inquiry whenever they were together. Like her own father, Jeanette reveled in her grandchildren's successes and passions, as when her grandson Cameron became a debate team champion as well. It was a great pleasure for Jeanette that her children and grandchildren lived fairly locally, with Victoria's family the farthest south in Jeanette's beloved New York City, and Luke's family the farthest north in Maine. Jeanette suffered 2 major familial losses in the midst of the joyful births of her grandchildren. Jack died of a stroke in 2008, and Mark died of a heart attack in 2012. As she had been her whole life, through ups and downs, Jeanette showed great resilience and stoicism with the deaths of her husband and her eldest child, though she was devastated by both losses. She continued in her service at First Parish, and she kept working part-time until 2015. She took a memorable European river cruise on her own after she actually retired. She was deeply distressed by American politics and uncivil discourse in recent years, and did what she could to support progressive change, including joining our congregation's support team for an undocumented family living in a sanctuary church over in Newton. During the pandemic, Jeanette adapted, as we all had to. She learned how to Zoom and came up with creative project ideas for the archives team when they absolutely could not meet in person. But she started experiencing troubling health issues related to her heart. She eventually stopped driving, and with her kids' support and encouragement, moved to a senior living home in Framingham in September of this year. I so clearly remember visiting her in her new studio apartment, where she offered me tea and something called pancake coffee cake. And we shared how happy we were that she had successfully recruited 2 younger people to the archives committee. And we discussed how thrilled the church would be when she would make her return to First Parish in November, about 6 weeks after her heart surgery on October 4th. The congregation was already making plans to get her rides out to Needham and how we would surprise her with her First Parish Doctor of Durability certificate on her 90th birthday. But quite unexpectedly and tragically, Jeanette did not survive the routine heart procedure on October 4th, and she died that evening. In closing the story of Jeanette's life, I relate strongly to her own description of her archival work for the church's tercentennial celebrations. We are sifting through material that has haphazardly accumulated. When this work is done, everything will be neatly cataloged and carefully preserved. But like written biographies, it is work that cannot truly capture the spirit of lives lived. And what a life lived, Jeanette. Jeanette was a beacon of the Unitarian Universalist spirit, and we will strive to carry on her flame. She is deeply missed, and her legacy will go on. Blessed be, and amen. I now invite forward Jeanette's sisters, Betsy and Ginger, to offer their reflections.
The story I want to share with you today of the happy occasion was the story behind this picture that was shown. We girls had grown up and were so close together, and then we got married and we scattered across the country and we had husbands and children, and we got lonesome to see each other. And so in the summer, we decided it would be a good idea to surprise Mother on her 70th or 75th birthday. We would take all the vacation money and leave our children and our husbands and fly home. Now we had scattered. Punky was in Dallas, Ginger and I were in Virginia, and Jetty was in Boston. So what seemed like a good idea in the summer turned into a winter nightmare because there was a massive snowstorm that covered the entire United States. So Ginger and I were lucky to get out of Virginia, and we were all planning to fly into Dallas and then drive. Punky was going to drive us to Duncan to surprise Mother for her birthday, February 13. So Jetty was the last, she caught the absolute last plane out of Logan Airport. We didn't think she was going to make it until we actually saw her get off that plane. So then we all got in the car and we followed a snowplow all the way from Dallas to the border of Oklahoma, and then it was straight. The highways were clear, and it wasn't until we got the highway to the turnoff in Duncan that Ginger said, some of my nursing friends said, "You're crazy for subjecting your mother. She might have a heart attack." And so we said, oh, we hadn't thought about that. I mean, so we had prepared Mother because Punky, we said, Punky, you go, she's closest, in Dallas, and Punky had said she was bringing the twins to surprise Mother for her birthday, and Mother was agreed. So Mother would be home. So we decided how we were going to go in one at a time. So we pulled into the driveway. Mother saw the car. She said, Punky, you're here. And she turned back to put on the coffee or to pull it off the stove. So Punky got to the door and she hugged her and she said, come in, Mother. I have a wonderful surprise for you. So Mother said, okay. She sat down and she said, where are the twins? And where's my surprise? Well, before she could say another word, I stepped through the door and I said, I am, And it took Mother a moment to react, and she said, oh, Betsy. And just then, Ginger stepped through the door, and she said, and I am. And Mother said, oh. And before she could exclaim further, we said, and we have another surprise for you. And she said, oh no, not Jetty. And sure enough, just on cue, Jetty came through the door. Well, we all started hugging and laughing and talking at the same time. Mother didn't know whether to stand up or sit down. I mean, there were light bulbs flashing because then we had light bulbs, and the neighbors started wondering what was all this flashing going on. And then Mother said, oh, I have to call Wilma. And then Wilma came over and she said, oh my goodness. And we said, don't tell her. And then Mother called Anios, and then we called my cousin Laverne in Texas, and then Laverne called her children, and then they all started coming, and Anios said, I'm coming tomorrow. And so we had this, and we had extended our vacation, our few days in Oklahoma, just because of the snowstorm. But it was just a joyful occasion, and it was so much fun, and it's one of my favorite memories.
My name is Ginger Critchley. I'm the youngest of the 4 McDonald girls. When Mother died in 1990, we decided we had to have a plan. We had to be able to stay in contact with each other. As Betsy said, we were scattered. At the time, Catherine was in Texas, Jeanette was in Massachusetts, Betsy was in Florida part of the time, and I was in Virginia. And we had lost our link. So our plan became our reunions. Our first reunion was in New York City in 1990. We decided if 3 of us were together, it would be a reunion. Weddings became great reunions. The farthest we went for a wedding reunion was to England for Victoria and Russell's wedding. Thank you. That was wonderful. We all had to wear hats. We went to a lot of different places for our reunions. We went to New Orleans, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Boston, Austin, Texas, and Santa Fe, among many others. Our kids pretty much found out that their mothers were going to fun places, and they wanted to come along with us. So we had the sister-cousin reunion. In Santa Fe, we had 7 cousins with us on that reunion, and we had a wonderful time. Our last reunion was in Oklahoma City, and this coincided with the McDonald family reunion. As we were planning the trip to Oklahoma, Jeanette said to me, "Ginger, what are we going to do in Oklahoma City?" I'm not sure if she thought they were still tying horses up to the railing or not. But anyway, so I said, well, they do have a museum. Now, if you knew her, you know she was all about museums. It was her thing. So we went to the museum in Oklahoma City. They happened to be having a Chihuly exhibit. When we were going back to the hotel, I said, "What did you think?" And she said, "It was wonderful. That Chihuly exhibit was better than the one at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts." I said, "Oklahoma City, you just received Jeanette Anderson's stamp of approval." When we were on a trip to Paris and London, Jack Anderson said of us, "Well, the McDonald girls, they cannot pass up a tea shop, a gift shop, a bookstore, or a bathroom." He knew us so well. I will always be thankful for our reunions and the time we had together. It has been memorable, and we have lost a link. May her memory be a blessing.
Thank you, Ginger and Betsy. I now invite Jeanette's daughter, Erica, forward for her reflection.
Hi, everyone. Don't have anything too prepared. I don't think my mother would like that, but that's all right. I do want to thank you all for everything you have done here for the service, for our family. It's a beautiful service. She would love it. Betty Singers, thank you. She would love simple gifts. It was in her many folders over and over again. But it was beautiful, and I will always remember that. She did leave a lot of papers, the archive committee. I need you for the many papers that she left, but she did love that committee. I also have a 3-page notation to whoever took her place of all kinds of instructions, so we'll go on. But you do honor her by being here, by being present, by all of your beautiful cards that you sent, and I feel like I know her a little bit better now, and that's a gift, too. My family, my aunts who I talk to day and night, my cousins who traveled so far, and their children, extended second, third cousins, we haven't figured it all out, but to come and called, and really we felt your support and love. It's hard to lose a person such as that. We always felt like we knew, I think, the right thing to do. What's the right thing to do? And so I told a friend of mine, it's like a little bit like being off the axis, I think, but we'll get there. So thank you to everybody here. The reception, she really loved it here, and we're so happy that she had you, and that we're here today to honor her, and I really feel that. So, thank you so much. I do have a funny story. We've talked a lot about hope and resiliency. I was saying this morning, sometimes you get phone calls and people are kind of asking for money, and they're, social fishing. They're doing it in kind of a funny way. They're trying to rip you off, And, so-and-so's got an accident, and she did kind of almost fall for it, but was saved by it. But from then on, when someone would call, and she kind of got onto it a little bit, she always believed that people could be changed and that, just drive and could do it. And she would say to them, I know what you're doing, and you sound like a perfectly nice person. I think if you went back to school, you would be... this would help you very much, and they might have done it, who knows, but that was kind of her in a nutshell. Yeah, all right, so thank you.
We have come to the time in our service when we invite all those with a brief reflection, memory, or story about Jeanette to come forward to the microphone here or wait for us to bring the microphone to you. For folks who are participating in the service over YouTube, you're welcome to share your stories in the chat box for the McDonald Anderson family to read later. We will have 10 minutes for open sharing, so please keep your remarks short so others have the opportunity to share. And now please come forward or wave.
First, I have to say I love this picture. And your family, her sisters, her daughters, look exactly like Jeanette. Really, she was so happy and proud of her family and her friends. So loving. And I will tell you that I sat next to her for almost 30 years over here, and the minute I walked in the door, I felt like I came home. I want to lastly say, Jeanette was, her theme of social justice was extraordinary. I couldn't believe in her obituary that she took economics. What? That's not Jeanette. Lastly, I know she taught a long time in Dorchester. I've taught in Dorchester. It's a big deal to teach in Dorchester. It's a tough neighborhood. Thank you. I feel like Jeanette's still here.
Artie Crocker. So a number of us will probably remember this, or at least some part of the congregation will remember this. When the Andersons first moved to Needham, within a few years, talk about jumping right in, a number of families in Needham would rent a house in Westport called Howland House. And one of those pictures up there was of that house, Howland House, and either side down the hill were a couple of big, salt ponds, I don't know what you call them. But again, that was my first memory of the Anderson. And Erica and Mark and Luke and Victoria, you were much younger then, so I was probably, I don't know who you are, you're way too young, type of thing. But it's a great memory. It was a great memory of the Andersons, and I certainly, going forward, my memories are much more so with Jack and Jeanette at that point, just how wonderful they were. But talking about jumping right into a congregation, and that's pretty much what it was. Within a few years, I mean, this is families renting a house together and sharing on and off weeks being there together. You know, it takes something to do that, and they did it well. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share? Many thanks to all of you. With grief in our hearts at Jeanette's loss, yet joy for all the happy times we shared with her, we pause together for a moment of quiet when we can reflect, remember, and rejoice that Jeanette was a part of our lives. Amen. Now please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, We Laugh, We Cry. We'll sing verses 1, 3, and 4 as printed in the insert in your orders of service. Thank you all so much for being here today in the building and online. On behalf of Jeanette's family, we are deeply grateful for your presence in this service and for your presence in the arc of Jeanette's life. For those of you who are here in Needham, again, you are welcome to join the McDonald Anderson family for a reception in our parish hall after the service. And it's so beautiful outside. You'll have boxed cookies you can take when you go. You can also head out there if you want to eat them without having to mess around with these. And please remember to take care of yourselves and one another in the coming weeks and months when the hole Jeanette has left in the fabric of our lives is most acutely and painfully felt. As we close our memorial celebration of Jeanette's life, take these words from Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Sarah Moores Campbell, chosen by Jeanette. Take these with you today as a benediction. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Blessed be, and amen.